It happened on the day she was supposed to begin her forever. The church was glowing with gold, music swelling, cameras flashing, promises spoken beneath glass and light. And just as Evelyn Ward took her first step down the aisle, her phone buzzed. One message, two sentences, you're fired. Consider it my gift. The sender, Tate Rowan, her arrogant new boss, the man who'd stolen her work and her future, the place, the company she had built from the ground up, the timing, her wedding day. That text destroyed her career, humiliated her in front of the world, but it also rebuilt her into something unstoppable. Because when the storm hit and the city she once protected began to crumble, Evelyn didn't look for revenge. She designed it. This is not a love story. It's not even a story about betrayal. It's a story about power reclaimed, about a woman who learned that sometimes the foundation has to break before the world learns how strong she really is. The church bells were late. Not by much, just 3 seconds offbeat. But for someone like Evelyn Ward, who built her life around precision, even that soft delay hummed like static in the air. She'd noticed it through the lace veil, the tremor between the final chord and the silence that followed. It was the kind of detail no one else caught, the kind that said something beneath the noise was off. Outside the cathedral, a storm was stalking the city. The sky was all graphite and glass, the clouds swollen with the kind of weight that promised rain but didn't deliver it. Inside, the air smelled like white roses and old wood polish, the scent of careful beginnings. Evelyn's hands, usually steady from years of drafting digital blueprints, shook slightly as she held the bouquet. The fabric of her dress whispered when she moved. Her heels clicked like a metronome across marble behind her. Karen was laughing softly with the photographer. His voice, low calm, the kind that could make chaos blink, was her tether. Every sound in that church fold around him, the laughter of their families, the rustle of dresses, the shifting of anticipation. It all made sense when he was nearby. And then her phone vibrated. It wasn't supposed to. She told herself no distractions today, no reminders, no alerts. The phone was hidden in her clutch for emergencies only, a habit she'd learned after years in corporate construction management where urgent meant a someone else's disaster. For a heartbeat, she thought it was Karen, or maybe her maid of honor sending another, it looks stunning text. She smiled, half curious, and opened the clutch. One notification, a name she hadn't seen in months, Tate Rowan. Her breath caught. He wasn't supposed to contact her. Not after the screaming match, not after the board meeting, not after everything he'd done to dismantle her last project. But there it was, a single text glowing through the veil's shadow. You're done. Consider this your final notice. Think of it as my wedding gift. For a moment, she didn't feel her hands. The phone might as well have been a shard of glass. The orchestra outside her thoughts swelled. A romantic cue, wrong in every possible way. Somewhere the flower girl dropped her petals early. The sound of applause drifted in from the hall as the ceremony cue began. Evelyn stared at the message until the words blurred. Fired on her wedding day. The absurdity of it didn't fit inside logic. Tate had been quiet for months, too quiet. The last she heard, he'd been overseeing operations at Crescent Dynamics, the firm she'd once saved from collapse with her project tracking system. The system he'd stolen credit for. The system that now powered the city's entire development portfolio, and now he'd decided to erase her again, except this time he'd chosen a day carved in white and promise. She didn't realize she was trembling until Karen touched her shoulder. Hey, he said, his voice soft and certain. If you design for strength, design also for the moment it breaks. That was the rule no one at Crescent had ever understood. Strength wasn't about perfection, it was about flexibility. Things like people survive because they learned how to bend. By the third day, messages had shifted from panic to pleading. Gregory's voicemails, once frantic, became quieter, heavy with exhaustion. One of them came from a hospital room. She could hear the beeping machines in the background. Evelyn, he said, his voice thinned by medication. I let my son make decisions he wasn't ready for. If the city shuts us down, hundreds lose their jobs. Don't do this to them. Don't do this to me. She replayed it 3 times. The words don't do this to them twisted something in her chest. He still couldn't see it. She wasn't doing anything to anyone, Tate had. She was simply choosing not to clean his mess. But guilt is an architect, too. It builds its own walls. Karen found her on the balcony again that evening, her phone glowing with unanswered calls. You're not responsible for their choices, he said gently. I know, she said, though she didn't believe it. But the system's mine. If it fails, it's my signature on the skeleton. He leaned on the railing beside her. Then build something new, Evie. Not to save them, to save you. The way he said her name made her breathe again. Back in the city, the story had already escaped containment. A whistleblower leaked internal memos to a local journalist. A Crescent at risk safety system shut down by internal conflict. The article ran with her name buried in the middle, described only as the former lead engineer. The comments section turned vicious, half defending her, half accusing her of sabotage. Karen read a few and shut his phone off. Don't look, he said, it's poison. Evelyn looked anyway. Each line was a wound that wouldn't bleed. She abandoned them. Typical power move. Probably sued for attention. People had a way of turning your pain into entertainment. 2 days later, she received an email. No greeting, no subject line. Just a single sentence. You think you can win, but the system's already mine. Tate, it wasn't even a threat. It was a man mistaking possession for victory. She stared at the line until it stopped meaning work. Then, for the first time since the wedding, she laughed, a sharp, humorless sound that startled Karen awake. What? He asked. I just realized, she said, wiping a tear from her cheek. He has no idea what he's done. The system's encrypted under my signature. He has access, but not not control? Karen grinned slowly. So he's sitting on a loaded gun with no safety switch? Exactly. And sooner or later it's going to misfire. The laughter turned into resolve. It wasn't about revenge now. It was about balance, restoring what had been twisted. The morning after they returned home, Evelyn walked into her old apartment office. The light was gray, filtered through dusty blinds. She opened the laptop and began drafting what looked suspiciously like a business plan. Name brainstorming filled the margins of a notepad, Echelon Systems, Reverie Engineering, Nova Build Consult. Nothing fit until she wrote Wardline, a quiet play on her last name, and the word line, as in blueprint line, lineage, or defense line, Wardline Consulting. It sounded like both an oath and a warning. She registered the domain that afternoon. Then she sent one email, not to Crescent, not to Gregory, but to the City Infrastructure Department. Dear Commissioner Leary, I understand Crescent's project is under safety review. I'm the original architect of the monitoring software. I have reason to believe certain edits may compromise load integrity. I'm available for an independent consultation pro bono if needed. Evelyn Ward, it was a bold move, almost reckless. But if the city accepted, it meant transparency. It meant Tate couldn't bury the truth under paperwork. By evening, the reply came. Tate stood at the head of the long glass table surrounded by half-empty coffee cups and blueprints. His posture was that of a man trying to appear composed but failing at the edges, shoulders too square, jaw too tight. Evelyn, he said. The word was neither greeting nor apology, Mr. Rowan. She placed her bag on the table. Let's make this efficient. Gregory sat in a chair near the window, thinner than before, his complexion ghost pale. His eyes flicked between them, heavy with fatigue. Guy asked her to come, he said, his voice strained. The city insisted, but I agreed. We need transparency. Tate's jaw flexed. A transparency or humiliation. Evelyn met his stare evenly. Sometimes they're the same thing. Leary cleared his throat, breaking the static. We're here for one reason. Ms. Ward built the original safety monitoring system. The city can't reopen construction until we confirm the system's integrity. Evelyn powered up her laptop, the screen reflecting in the polished table like a cold sunrise. Her fingers moved without hesitation. Login sequences, encrypted pathways, system diagnostics. Within minutes, cascading code filled the screen. Then she saw it, buried deep inside the update logs. Timestamps altered, permissions reassigned. Was an anomaly, a secondary authorization key, one that rerouted all final data to a private server. She highlighted the code block. This wasn't in my design, Tate shifted. You're assuming You're the only one who had the access level to add it, she interrupted. Gregory straightened painfully. Tate's voice rose defensive sharp. It was for efficiency. The city was drowning us in revisions and revisions. I needed faster approvals. Evelyn scrolled further, her pulse climbing. These changes disabled the safety pressure alerts for the foundation columns. If there's an overload, no one will see it until it fails. Leary leaned forward. Are you telling me there's a structural risk on the active site? Ooh, yes, Evelyn said quietly. A serious one. The silence that followed was like a vacuum. Even the rain seemed to stop for a breath. Gregory turned to his son. You told me it was an optimization. Tate's composure cracked. It was. The alerts were slowing progress. Evelyn stood. They were saving lives. You didn't optimize. You silenced the alarm. He flinched as if she'd struck him. You don't understand what it's like. Everyone expects me to be you, to fix what you built, to be better than my last name, and so you risked people's lives to escape it, she asked. That's not pressure, Tate. That's cowardice. Leary closed the laptop, ending the argument like a gavel. I'm halting the project immediately. The city will issue a safety review and a full audit. If this data is accurate, Crescent's license is suspended. Gregory sagged in his chair, face buried in his hands. Tate stared at the table, silent for once. Evelyn gathered her files, but as she turned to leave, Gregory spoke. Not to the room, but to her. Evelyn, I know I don't deserve to ask, but help us fix this. Not for him, for the workers, please. She hesitated at the door. You're asking me to rescue the same system that erased me. I'm asking you, he said, to keep people safe. The conflict landed like a stone in her chest. She walked out before she could answer. Outside, the air smelled of ozone. She stood on the sidewalk, rain running down her sleeves, watching the city blur behind the drizzle. Every instinct screamed that she should walk away. Tate deserved collapse. Crescent deserved consequence. But the cranes on the horizon looked like bones of unfinished creatures, their shadows reaching toward a skyline that still believed in gravity. Karen called as she stood there. How did it go? She laughed without humor. It went like truth usually does, loud, messy, and late. You okay? She hesitated. I don't know, they built something dangerous. If I don't act, people get hurt. And in the middle of it stood Evelyn Ward, soaked, exhausted, her hand gripping a dying console that had saved a building, and reluctantly the man who tried to erase her. By noon, she was a headline. A hero or hacker. Former engineer saved city project after sabotage scandal. A Crescent cover-up, founder's son accused of negligence. Her name was everywhere again, but not how she wanted it. In her apartment, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. City officials, journalists, former colleagues wanting to talk off the record. Even her mother had left a message that began with, I saw you on TV, sweetheart, and ended with, are you in trouble again? Karen brewed coffee in silence, his calm now worn thin around the edges. You've been up for 36 hours, he said. You need to rest. Evelyn rubbed her eyes. If I close them, I'll see steel falling. He set the cup in front of her and crouched beside the chair. You did everything right. A right doesn't mean safe, she said. That building almost came down because I hesitated, because I wanted them to fall first." Karen reached for her hand. "You stopped it. That's what matters." She didn't answer. Somewhere in the static between pride and guilt, she felt a strange emptiness, the hollow that follows survival. The official summons arrived at dusk. A folded letter with the city seal. Notice of inquiry, Department of Infrastructure Oversight. You are requested to appear before the review board regarding the Crescent Project incident. Beneath it, a second page. Mr. Tate Rowan and Mr. Gregory Rowan are also required to appear. Evelyn read it twice, feeling the air in her lungs thin. An inquiry meant politics, not truth. It meant reputations dressed up as regret. Karen saw the letter and frowned. "We're walking into a firing squad." "I know," she said, "but if I don't go, they'll write the story without me." The review board chamber was carved from marble and self-importance. Rows of microphones lined the curved table like judgmental insects. Reporters crowded the back, whispering in the dark. Evelyn sat at one end, flanked by Commissioner Leary. Across from her, Tate and Gregory, father and son, same shoulders, different weights. Tate's eyes were ringed with sleeplessness. Gregory's tremor was barely hidden under the table. The chairwoman began. "We are here to determine accountability in the Crescent incident and to assess compliance failures that led to a near-structural collapse. The first hour was a blur of protocol, project codes, permits, procedural jargon." Evelyn answered every question with clinical precision, watching the panel's pens move like synchronized weapons. Then came the inevitable shift. "Ms. Ward," one of the councilmen said, "you previously worked for Crescent and developed the system involved in the malfunction. Why didn't you alert authorities earlier if you knew of potential risks?" Evelyn kept her voice even. Because I was terminated without access to the system. My alerts were silenced by internal revision." The man smiled thinly. "That's convenient." Leary leaned forward. "A councilman, we've verified the access logs. The revisions were made after her departure, but the tone had already shifted. The room wanted drama, not data." When Tate's turn came, the temperature dropped. He stood, adjusted the mic, and said quietly, "The failure is mine." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Gregory looked up sharply. Tate continued, "I altered her system. I disabled safety warnings to accelerate approvals. I take full responsibility." The board chair frowned. "Are you aware this admission could result in criminal charges?" "Yes." Evelyn's throat tightened. She hadn't expected this. She'd prepared for his deflection, not confession. The chair turned to her. "Miss Ward, do you confirm his statement?" She hesitated. The silence grew until it felt like a noose. The building's bones jutted against the night sky, black against black, as though refusing resurrection. She parked near the barricades, headlights slicing through the fog. The air smelled like wet metal. At first she thought she was alone. Then a figure stepped out from the shadows, coat soaked, face drawn. Tate. He looked older than she remembered, not by years, but by consequence. The rain had plastered his hair against his forehead, his expression unreadable in the glare of her headlights. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "You shouldn't either," he answered. Lightning cracked somewhere above the river. For a heartbeat, they were two silhouettes carved in white light. The architect and the inheritor, each framed by their ruin. He took a step forward. "You think I did it?" "I know you did," she said. "Who else had the system keys?" "A deal from Crescent," he said, voice trembling. "I'm not that stupid." "You forged my ID. I used your ID to find the transfers," he snapped. "My father moved the money, Evelyn. He built shell companies years ago to hide debt. When the investigation started, he tried to cover it by dumping the logs into your old code. He thought no one would check the encryption patterns." She stared at him. "You expect me to believe this?" He met her gaze. "You should. I brought proof." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small hard drive, waterproof casing, cracked at the edge. "These are the original transaction records. Your name isn't on them. Mine is. So is his." She hesitated. "Why give this to me?" "Because he's dying," Tate said quietly. "And I'm not ready to let his guilt kill both of us." The wind shifted, carrying the faint groan of steel from the half-built tower. Evelyn stepped closer, searching his face. "I know. Because you once told me every structure deserves a chance to stand, he said, even the broken ones." For the first time, she saw not arrogance but fragility, the look of a man unlearning himself. But trust was a fragile thing, too. She took the drive anyway. A sound broke the air, the echo of tires on wet pavement. A second car pulled up beside hers, headlights washed over them. Gregory Rowan stepped out slowly, umbrella forgotten, his face pale under the rain. "Tate," he called, his voice barely carrying. "Isn't he the drive?" Evelyn froze. Tate didn't move. "Dad, now." Gregory's voice was ragged, desperate. "You don't understand what's on it." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Tate said. "You framed her." Gregory's composure cracked. "I protected us. If Crescent fell, the workers, you protected yourself?" Evelyn said. "You built your empire in shortcuts, and now you're trying to bury the evidence under my name." Rain lashed harder. The sound swallowed their words. Gregory took another step, slipping slightly on the slick ground. You think anyone will believe you?" He hissed. "You think the city wants another scandal? They'll bury this drive, and they'll bury you with it." Tate moved in front of Evelyn, voice shaking. "You won't touch her." The old man's eyes went glassy. "You still don't understand, do you? You can't save her. You can't even save yourself." And then his knees buckled. For a moment, no one moved. Gregory collapsed into the mud, gasping. Evelyn dropped beside him, instinct overpowering anger. His pulse fluttered weakly beneath her fingers. "Tate, call an ambulance." But Tate was frozen, caught between rage and grief. His lips parted as if to speak, but no sound came. Evelyn pressed her hand against Gregory's chest, feeling the shallow rise and fall. His eyes flickered open just once. "I wanted to fix it," he whispered. "I thought I could fix everything." And then he went still. The rain didn't stop. It only grew heavier, as if the sky refused silence. Hours later, Evelyn sat in the back of a police car, the hard drive sealed in an evidence bag on her lap. Tate sat beside her, head bowed, silent. Blue lights painted the street in pulses of remorse. Detective Hale leaned into the open door. "We verified the data. The transfers came from Gregory's personal accounts. You're cleared." Evelyn nodded faintly. Relief didn't come, only a numbness that felt worse. Hale hesitated. "You saved the city twice, Ms. Ward. Most people don't get the chance to do that." She looked out the window, watching the tower through the rain, a skeleton still reaching upward. "That's the problem," she said. "It keeps needing saving." He closed the door softly and walked away. The sun broke for the first time in weeks the next morning. The rain had rinsed the city raw. Evelyn stood at the riverfront, watching light catch on the glass of unfinished buildings. Behind her, cranes creaked back to life, resuming their mechanical prayer to gravity. Karen joined her quietly. He hadn't said much since the night before. Grief had its own silence. "Funeral's tomorrow," he said. She nodded. "He wasn't evil," she murmured. "It's just afraid." "And Tate?" She exhaled. "He'll face charges. He'll survive them." "Maybe that's its own punishment." Karen looked at her. "And you." "I'm done building things for other people to break." He smiled faintly. "Oh, so what now?" She watched the water shimmer, the city rebuilding itself in reflection. "And now," she said, "I built something that can't be taken from me." She reached into her pocket, pulled out a folded blueprint, one she'd drawn the night before. A single phrase at the top: Project Phoenix. It wasn't a company, it was a promise, a public safety foundation to train young engineers, teach ethical design, build transparency into every line of code. She let the paper flutter in the wind, then caught it again. "Every system fails eventually," she said softly. "But if you build with truth, the ruins still stand." Karen took her hand. "You're still the architect," he said. Evelyn smiled for the first time in months. "No," she said. "I'm the fault line that learned how to hold." That night, as she walked past the Crescent site one last time, she saw Tate there, alone, placing flowers by the chain-link fence. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. He nodded once, a silent truce between two survivors. She nodded back. Lightning flickered far off over the horizon. Not a threat now, just illumination. And for the first time since the text on her wedding day, Evelyn Ward didn't flinch. The storm was finally behind her. Winter came early that year. The first frost painted the city in silver, rooftops dusted, streetlights glowing through breath-white haze. From her apartment window, Evelyn Ward watched steam curl off the river like something exhaled by the path. The skyline shimmered, cranes in silhouette, the half-rebuilt Crescent Tower standing still but not silent. 3 months had passed since the night Gregory Rowan collapsed under the rain. In the public record, the story had already hardened in a narrative. Visionary founder dies amid scandal. Son pleads guilty to falsified data. Community service sentence reduced for cooperation. Hero engineer launches nonprofit to reform construction ethics. People love closure. They love the illusion that every structure ends neatly, a door sealed, a story filed away. Evelyn knew better. Buildings breathe long after the workers go home. Wardline had changed too. What began as a consultancy had become the Phoenix Institute, a foundation for independent safety innovation. Their office was a converted warehouse by the river, exposed brick, open beams, tables littered with half-built sensor prototypes and old coffee mugs. The hum of 3D printers filled the air like a heartbeat. She didn't run it alone. Karen had taken leave from his department to handle community partnerships, and sometimes late at night when everyone had gone home, they'd sit in the open workspace surrounded by the soft glow of monitor lights. He asked her once, "Do you miss the old work? The skyscrapers, the deadlines, the power?" She'd smile. "I used to think scale made something important. Now I think clarity does." It wasn't revenge that had driven her anymore. It was continuity, the desire to make sure what she'd learned out of pain became something that could protect someone else. Every so often, reporters still called. They wanted new angles on the old story. What really happened between you and Tate, or how did it feel to be betrayed? She refused most of them. But one evening, she made an exception. The journalist was young, nervous, with a recorder too big for her hands. She asked polite questions at first about ethics reform, about technology. Then she leaned forward and whispered, "If you could go back to the moment he fired you, would you change anything?" Evelyn looked at her for a long moment. Outside, snow was beginning to fall, lazy, tentative flakes. "Oh, I used to replay that moment every night," she said. "The text, the dress, the shock. But grief is a teacher. It stops asking what you'd change and starts asking what you've built since. I wouldn't rewrite the moment. I'd redesign what it meant." The reporter blinked. "What does it mean now?" "Well, it means I was freed by someone who thought he was destroying me." The woman nodded slowly, almost reverently, and clicked off the recorder. Evelyn didn't need to say more. Some stories aren't told. They're lived in how you choose to go on. Tate sent a letter 2 weeks after his sentencing. It arrived folded neatly, ink smudged where water had touched it. Rain or tears, she couldn't tell. "Evelyn, they gave me a second chance. Not to rebuild Crescent. That's gone. But to help with reconstruction on the community projects your foundation sponsors. I'll be working on the small housing sites by the river. Maybe one day, when the city's ready, you can see what we're building. I know you don't owe me forgiveness. But if there's a line between ruin and redemption, I'm trying to walk." Tate, she read it twice, folded it once, and placed it in a drawer beside the first blueprint she'd ever drawn. She didn't write back. Some apologies work best in silence. In early February, she visited the riverfront site, not to inspect, not to judge, just to see. The air smelled of wet clay and new beginnings. Workers moved around the foundations of a modest housing complex, affordable, sustainable, open-source designs, the kind her foundation had begun teaching. She saw Tate before he saw her, in a hard hat, gloves dirty, shoulders bent. No camera crews, no speeches. Just labor. Just a man working to repair something bigger than reputation. He looked up, startled, and their eyes met across the framework of a future. She raised a hand. Not quite a wave, not quite forgiveness, and he nodded, a quiet acknowledgement. Then they both turned back to their work. For the first time, she realized redemption didn't have to be mutual to be real. That evening, Evelyn walked through the nearly finished Crescent Tower, now renamed the Rowan Public Center. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same structure that once symbolized greed now housed libraries, classrooms, and community workshops. She stepped into the main hall where late sunlight poured through unfinished glass. The light caught dust motes midair, turning them into gold fragments. The city noise outside was muted here, replaced by the faint hum of HE systems being tested, a new heart learning to beat. Leary joined her, smiling tiredly. "We're opening next month. The mayor wants you to speak at the dedication. I'm not sure people want another speech from me." They don't want a speech," he said. "They want to know how you kept standing." She looked up at the ceiling where metal trusses crisscrossed like veins. "I didn't," she said quietly. "I learned how to bend." Leary nodded as if he understood, then left her alone with the sunlight. Now they glowed warm in the dusk. Every story, she thought, has a weight limit, and somehow she had exceeded hers. Later, on the balcony overlooking the skyline, she found Karen waiting with 2 mugs of coffee. The sky had turned the color of amber glass.